Hi, folks. This is Jeff Furman. Good afternoon to you. I'm speaking to you from the United States, and I will be talking a fair amount about the history of Ben & Jerry's, a company that I've been involved with for more than 40 years. It's in its inception, and also giving a little bit of my personal history. But in truth, what I'd really like to be talking about is to recruit all of you on this webinar to come over to the United States and use the power of your brands to help save our country. We're in a mess over here, a mess I never expected to be living through. And we could really use any help that you could give us. You know, I am painfully aware of the global struggles we all are experiencing. We have the pandemic, we have the climate situation, we have racial injustice, but in the United States, we also have the fact that our democracy is in jeopardy. And this is something that reinforces my commitment to encourage the private sector to get involved in these issues, because without its involvement, I'm not sure we can escape. So I hope you enjoy the Ben & Jerry's story, and maybe you'll put some energy into saving our nation. But first, I need to kind of set the records straight. It was put out that I'm a co-founder of Ben & Jerry's. I am not a co-founder. I was there before the company started as friends of both Ben and Jerry, and then got involved from the very beginning, and actually had the longest tenure of anybody on the board, as I said, of almost 40 years. But I did get the name Ampersand. They gave me that title, and that's something that I don't know why these PowerPoints are coming up, but I wasn't ready for them. I was just finishing saying that I'm the Ampersand, and I learned recently that there is a national holiday for the Ampersand. It's September 8th, so remember to celebrate that next year when it comes around. So I'm going to not have my face on this webinar, and starting now, and I'll go through the stories. So again, we're not up to the first slide, but well, let's leave it up there. That is actually something I was going to talk about in a minute, as Ben & Jerry struggled I struggled whether or not to join the company. But I'll start off with my first ethical dilemma, because I like to share it, and I'm always looking for a better answer on how I resolved it. It's started when I was very young. I was 6 years old when I had this ethical dilemma, and I've never forgotten it. And as I said, I'm looking for a really good answer. And the dilemma happened when my mother was taking me down to Florida during the winter for a week in Miami. And we would travel down by train. And as I said, I was 6. And when you turned 6, you had to pay full fare. And my mother told me if the conductor asked me how old I was, I had to say I was 5. And this is, of course, the same mother that said, always tell the truth, always tell the truth. So I was in this dilemma. What am I going to do if the conductor asked me? And I was full of a lot of tension. How do I deal with these two conflicting requests from the same person? And so I got anxious, and I only hoped the conductor wouldn't ask me what my age was, and I didn't know what I was going to say. But as it happened on the train, the conductor said to me, "Young man, how old are you?" And my answer just came out. I said, on the train, I'm 5, but at home, I'm 6. And that's how I kind of tried to wiggle out with it. He laughed, and we didn't get charged. So that's my first ethical dilemma. If during the Q&A you have any better explanations of what I should have done, please let me know. By way of personal background, I have been thrown out of high school and flunked out of college twice, and somehow I ended up with a business degree and a law degree while spending most of my time protesting a war that I considered immoral and advocating for racial and civil rights more than going to class. And I never anticipated that I would end up spending more than 40 years in the business world. It really was a quirk of fate. I had these 2 degrees, and making a very strange career move, I took a job as a bus driver in a very innovative school in New York State. And it was just an amazing place, and I was attracted to it. And they got somebody who was an accountant and a lawyer to drive their bus. This is a school with 25 young people. As it happened, Ben of Ben and Jerry's came along a year or 2 later, took a job teaching crafts. He had been a potter, not a successful one. We became friends, and then he and Jerry asked me to help them open up an ice cream shop. I did this as a friend, no formal training, and no formal relationship with the company, just as a friend. And what I did to help them out was I gave them a copy of a business plan for a pizza parlor, and I suggested that they take out the word pizza and put in ice cream. Number of ovens could become number of freezers, slices could become cones, and that was the business plan that they submitted, and they did get a small loan. They had no plan to grow, no vision of becoming a multinational company, no business training, no knowledge on how to make ice cream. As a matter of fact, they learned to do that by taking a correspondence course that cost $5. And they were always proud of the fact that they split it evenly. And that was how to make ice cream. Ben was in charge of flavor development. He has a very poor sense of smell. And they opened up in a cold climate. They did get a small loan, believe it or not, based on that background. And they opened up 1 store. And they operated it, just struggled along for a year or so. And one day they had to put a sign on their door saying, we're closed today because we have to figure out what we're doing. That was the extent of their ability to run a business. But after a few years, Jerry decided that he was going to leave. Actually, his wife was going to get her PhD in Arizona, and he said he was going to leave, and they were going to sell the company, and then they decided not to. Ben decided to keep it. They got sued by a business broker, and here's a story that I rarely tell, but I'll share it here with you today. They lost the lawsuit, and the judge said that they were going to freeze the bank account until they paid it. And the lawsuit amount was about $100,000. And I was there as a friend, not representing them at all. And I ended up running to the bank ahead of the sheriff and got there ahead of him, went up to the president and told him the story, the president of the bank, and he gave them and was willing to do this. We got $100,000. That's about all the money that we had in the bank. And I had to take it out in cash, so they couldn't stop the check. So I had $100,000 in cash in a paper bag. I flew home to New York State. I got home, and the woman that I was living with at the time, she said, "How was your trip?" And I said, "Honey, this is what I brought back," and dumped the paper bag full of cash onto the bed. And she was so impressed that we got married and have been married for over 30 years. So there was a good thing that happened with that. So, we never had heard about running a social responsible business. We didn't know about B Corps. We didn't know about corporate social responsibility or sustainability. But we always had this sense that we could run the business the way we wanted. And it was this slide that you now see up here no, not that one. Go back, please. It's the slide of Paul Hawkins. It's this statement that made us feel that business really had a opportunity for us to maintain our values and be able to bring our values into the business and into our work. And the idea of being able to bring my whole self into work was a great privilege and something that I feel so special to have had that opportunity. I didn't have to leave half myself outside the door at any time. And so with that privilege, we decided that we would run our business from our hearts. And that means that we had to feel we would take acceptance for the benefit of society as a whole. Well, I know that's easy to say, but what does it mean in practice? Well, it started simply. It started on our desire to connect with our community, which was in Vermont. And the very first thing we started to do was to give ice cream. We had an free ice cream day once a year. And now we're doing that in 40 countries. Now you can go to the next slide. And that's the slide of our free cone day. We now do it internationally, all around the world, and 35 countries that we're in. We have a free cone day as a way to give back. Also, we had to raise some money to expand because there was such demand for our product. And what we came up with, instead of going to a bank, and instead of getting a venture capitalist or another partner, we decided we wanted to sell the part of the business to raise the funds to the community, which we defined as people who lived in the state of Vermont. And we were told that was illegal, but we researched it and we found that we could do it. And people said, this is a bad idea. You'll never get the funds. You'll have to operate as a company, and there's a lot of expenses when you have stockholders. We said we wanted to do it anyway. And we went ahead and did it. And then everybody said, oh, you guys are geniuses. Your owners are pretty much the same people as your customers. We were just in Vermont at the time, pretty much. And what a brilliant thing to do. And then we used to have these shareholder meetings that turned out to be a huge music festival. And we had more people come to that shareholder meeting than anywhere in the state of Vermont, any other gathering, and politicians came, and it grew to be an amazing annual event. We also, internally, we came up with the idea of a salary ratio. Nobody should make more than 5 times what anybody else made. We gave health insurance. At that time, there wasn't a same-sex marriage, but if you had a partnership that you couldn't get married with, we included that under health insurance. We started to look out for our employees. We started to do stuff in our community more and more, and the business really took off. And it started to grow so much that Haagen-Dazs, which was our main competitor, told the distributors that if they carried Ben & Jerry's, they could no longer carry Haagen-Dazs. And Haagen-Dazs at that time was owned by Pillsbury. And that, as you may know, their Doughboy is their brand image. And so now you can go to the next slide. And this is what we had to come up with. Jerry gave a one-person protest at the headquarters of Pillsbury. What's the Doughboy afraid of? And this caught on and got us so much media attention. We were the sort of David of the David and Goliath story, a little company fighting against Pillsbury. And it created such havoc that eventually they agreed to stop doing that. We also got a lawyer, but it was our little grassroots activism that moved us along. We were also very opposed to war and the fact that the U.S. is a country that's almost always at war. If you are born in the U.S., you are about a 90% chance that you were born at the time that the U.S. Has been at war. So we're at war, sometimes one or two wars at the same time, almost always. So we came out opposed to the Iraq war. We're one of the few companies ever to do this. We took out ads. We had a flavor called American Pie, which showed the immense use of our military budget. And we also came out with 1% for peace, which said we should use 1% of our profits for peace, to use for peace through understanding rather than building more weapons. As you can see in this slide, thank you for putting it up. As you can see in this slide, there's the three of us. There's me and with my beard a different color than it is now, sitting in the middle of Ben and Jerry at a music festival, and we were promoting 1% for peace. And of course, everybody said, "You think you're going to get the federal government to give you guys what would have been about $3 billion at the time to operate with you?" But we wanted to raise this issue, so we went very public with this. A company that took this stand, and this got a lot of publicity for the company, and we also tried to make it work. And we got a lot of other businesses to agree to support this thing by giving 1% of their profits to help get the word out about our absurd military budget. And next slide, please. There, we were sitting for a long time, and we were at a festival, as I mentioned, and that's both of us kind of getting up and dancing. We can't sit that long. So we went ahead and Ben and I decided to mingle with the crowd, and that was a lot of fun. And so it was really the first time we began to use a product, because we came up with Peace Pops, a single serve item on a stick that had the peace message on it. And we realized how much messaging we could get out on our product. We also got involved in the Amazon and saving the rainforest by coming out with a flavor called Rainforest Crunch. And we really understood that the power is in how you run your business day to day. There are many opportunities when you integrate social issues in all your decisions. But we also understood that building a brand is different. We were operating from our hearts and not from a marketing or a spreadsheet perspective or consumer testing perspective. We were trying to stay true to our values. I remember one time when we were promoting being GMO free, and we realized we couldn't get Heath bars that were GMO free, and Heath Bar Crunch was our number one seller. So we had to decide whether to keep it, and it was about a 10-minute discussion. We took it off the marketplace, even though it was our number one seller. But one thing that we also learned is that neither Ben, nor Jerry, nor myself, or anybody else that we knew that was close to us had CEO material. We didn't want to run the company, and we weren't capable of running the company. It had become so big. So we did a national search. We had, actually, it says 20,000 people applied. Well, it actually, in the end, turned out to be over 25,000 people applied, sending resumes on cakes and fun ways to do this. No company has ever done that. Usually you hear about the news of a CEO. You read it in the Wall Street Journal, but we made a whole big marketing thing. I actually ran that campaign, and it was amazing. the creativity that came our way about people applying. The second prize was not the job, but was free ice cream for life. And so we used to kid around that it's better to come in second than to become the CEO. But that led us to be professionally managed, something that we brought in an outsider who had a lot of experience. And that meant giving stock options and creating this whole different structure in our company, which forced the sale to Unilever because they really wanted to sell it. That's how they could cash out pretty quick. And we fought it for 18 months. We didn't want it to happen. But eventually, it looked like it was going to happen. One of the big issues for me personally was and is making sure our employees get paid a living wage to take care of their basic needs. And we had that in place. And when it looked like we were going to sell to Unilever, I asked to go into their meeting room and meet with them because I had one last thing to ask. I didn't know if it would happen. I asked that I wanted a commitment that Unilever would continue to honor our living wage commitment to our employees. They asked me, said, is this the last thing? And I said, yes, this is the last thing. And then we're prepared to vote on it officially as a board. But this last part of the agreement, they agreed to pay a living wage. And then I said, well, somebody has to look out for that. I'm happy to be that person. And so I need standing to sue you. And they agreed to that. And I was feeling so good, so powerful. And then I said, well, if I ever have to sue you folks, I can't sue Unilever. You're a huge company. I'm just a single individual. And I asked if they would pay my legal costs. And they said yes. So this led to a very unique agreement, which is an agreement that goes on in perpetuity. It is a place where we self-appoint ourselves. We have control over the social mission, marketing, product quality. While we can't hire and fire the CEO, we have a ability to impact their compensation. And this agreement has never been done by any other company that purchased a smaller company. We have this power that goes on in perpetuity. And so we had to learn how to work together. Next slide, please. And so we had to convince Unilever that when we considered ourselves a social responsible company, it wasn't, we just didn't pick an issue and try to do this. We had to deal with all the issues that were happening, all the struggles that were going on for those who are marginalized and oppressed. And so this is the kind of struggle we had working with Unilever, operating from a social justice perspective rather than just a monetary perspective. And they had put in our branding peace, love, and ice cream as our sort of mantra. But peace, love, and ice cream, if you look at peace and love and go online, you'll see hundreds of companies use that. That's all over the place. That's a branding image. And what we came up with is a ice cream for justice. Next slide, please. This is what we feel our brand should be about. Justice in all its flavors. That's what Ben & Jerry's is about. And that's what we continue to work on. We understand that it's relatively easy to do charity, and it doesn't make take much thought or commitment or struggle to give food or money to people who are suffering. I'm saying that knowing that charity is important, and I appreciate people who donate. I do myself, but charity is a Band-Aid for a symptom, not a solution to the root problem. And we know many times that's the best thing an individual can do because they don't have that huge amount of resources. But for corporations, which have a big marketing budget, and communications and PR departments and packages and graphics and a public profile that enables their voice to be heard. Charity is merely a safe way, but does not deal with systemic change. And so several times after Unilever bought the company, I was asked to be chair, and I turned it down. But I finally accepted in 2008, and I felt that I had the power to make things happen, but I wasn't sure I had the power to make it happen well. Next slide, please. So I ran across this saying, and this is what I interpreted to mean is that the best thing I could do is not try to push down an agenda of social justice into the company, but rather have a way where the employees began to take it on and yearn for us for this. So this was an important way that I tried to do this. And we began with learning journeys on racial justice issues. We traveled we've been to down south. We've been all over the country when they want to learn about mass incarceration. We've been out in California, in Oakland. This is the recent one that we did with our employees down to Montgomery, Alabama, where that's very well known in the United States, really began the civil rights movement in the 50s with Martin Luther King. And there's a lot of history there. And then we went to New Orleans, where there's a lot of environmental struggles. And we go as a group and people learn. And that has really helped the company, and it's been amazing how stuff bubbles up. There's issues, the company is fighting for economic injustice, supports the Occupy movement. We're looking in our fair trade with farm workers, etc. We take on the climate. We take the employees to Paris. We have a self-imposed carbon tax. We've taken on Black Lives Matter, very controversial in the United States. Next slide, please. This is a statement that came from the employees. This came up to the board. It came up to all of us. And they said, we want to take a stand. And this was when I'm talking about employees, I'm not just talking about management. I'm talking about men and women who work in our factories. So changing the culture and driving it deep into our DNA is a very, very important thing. We pushed against our current presidential administration by coming out with a flavor called Resist to enhance democracy. We've been working on that. We came out with a flavor called Empowerment. So what have we really learned? What does it require to run a company like Ben & Jerry's? It requires you to be real. It requires you to be transparent. It requires you to admit mistakes. It requires you to walk the talk. It requires you to take risks, sometimes even accept a boycott. It requires you to be consistent, and you will be held to a high standard. It requires you to look at the social impact of your decisions. It requires you not to hop on a fad, but to make deep commitments. It requires you to choose to sometimes use your power not in self-interest, but in the interest of those who are oppressed. It requires you to accept that some may speak out against you. There are those that say that justice is not our business, that we should stick to making ice cream. When asked that question, here's how I often respond. Next slide, please. I was in the Netherlands a couple of years ago and got a lot of publicity. And this is the statement that got bolded in the press, where I was talking about that, Ben & Jerry's is irrelevant if we didn't have a social mission. The world does not need another ice cream company. The freezers would be just as full as they are today if Ben and Jerry's didn't exist. It's really our mission that brings us our relevance. So these guys have remained good friends of mine. Next slide, please. Here we are speaking at the National Press Club. You can see us aging all together. We were speaking about economic inequality. There I seem to be in the ampersand position. This was just a couple of years ago. In 2014, I announced that I was leaving the company. In 2018, I gave a 4-year notice that I would resign from my role as chair and that I would leave the board of directors. That date happened to be when I would turn 75 years old, and I would have been with the company for 40 years. I figured that was time, and I figured the most important thing I could do was to ensure that the legacy of our mission continued and that the person who took the role of the chair would be somebody that I would feel really secure about their continuing the company to maintain its social mission. And I felt that I accomplished that. She is great. She's been doing the job for a little over 2 years. And I feel very proud of that I left the company in such capable years. So who would have thought all this is possible? 40 plus years from people who didn't even know how to make ice cream, still growing, still profitable, still standing out. But now we see B Corps, other companies doing amazing work, Gen Z demanding it, and that energy makes one feel hopeful. So thank you. Be real, have fun. You can make a difference. Happy to take any questions. Thanks.
So Jeff, thank you very much. We have a few questions for you. So I will
I'll give a few answers.
So do you think Ben & Jerry's could have been as successful if there wasn't a mission behind the brand?
It wouldn't have been successful like it is. It really made us stand out. What made us stand out is the mission came natural to us in the beginning. So I always have said that the mission will encourage people to try our product once, and it better taste good because they won't try it a second time. So it needed both a high quality commitment to what our product would be, both in its ingredients and its innovation. So without the combination of that, we wouldn't have been successful. But we know all companies talk about quality, but what we really stood out with is because of our social mission, because we were really driven. And what I tried to say in my talk is that it's internalized now. It's internalized in the company, which is an amazing thing when you have employees continuing to push social agendas up instead of coming down from the founders. You really can see what you can accomplish.
Well, thank you. And are you satisfied with the impact Ben & Jerry's has today on social issues, or could the brand do more, according to you?
I don't think our brand can do more, but that doesn't mean I'm satisfied with the impact. We need, as I said in the beginning, we're one company. We're a tiny company. We're a small part of one multinational company. So our impact is not significant enough in what we do. The best impact we have had is building up a movement. And so I've spoken in Argentina, in Guatemala. I've spoken around the country. I've been in the Netherlands before, trying to encourage other entities to do this kind of work, both from the perspective of how it makes one feel when you're doing this kind of work, but also that we need others, and we try to demonstrate that there are a lot of people that will come not only just to like your company, but to love your company.
Yeah, well, thank you. And what other retailers or brands are having the biggest positive social impact right now, according to you?
Well, the ones that I know of, I think, are ones that have been doing it for a long time. Companies like Patagonia, companies like Dr. Bronner's. I don't know all the energy that's coming out in small companies, but small companies around the United States. I don't know how they're impacting in Europe, but those in the United States, these are ones that are based in their communities, and they're small, but they're doing great work within their communities, and that they don't get the same kind of national publicity that we do. But there are a lot of them, and then there's a whole B Corp movement that is now something that people talk about up front, becoming a B Corp, and that has meant something. Then there's the new dialogue, new energy around become a purpose-led company. So this is around being talked about much more than it was when we started 1978.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. And there is the last question. A lot of businesses are greenwashing the brand nowadays. So how can you make sure consumers believe in your mission?
Well, I think consumers know that.
Yeah.
They find out when it's greenwashing, when it's not real. That's we used to be accused of doing what we did to improve sales. And then our response generally was, let other companies do this. Let other companies stand up for Black lives, talk about white privilege, take on the government around going to war. We do this, and also take care of our employees, and we pay extra. We pay a living wage to our farm workers who work on the farms that supply us milk. We go right down through our supply chain, and we get held to the very high standards. So I think if a company decides that it wants to get engaged in this stuff because it's going to increase sales, I believe that the consumers will realize that soon, and that is what you're trying to do, is to get them to really believe you. And you have a high hurdle because there's a lot of cynicism, just as you mentioned in the question, about being accused of greenwashing. So it should be real. Otherwise, I don't think it can be that impactful on a social justice level or that impactful on your bottom line.
Yeah, definitely. So, Jeff, thank you very much for your time and for your wonderful work. Really appreciate it.
Yes,
And
thank you.
I think we will wrap it up right here.
All right.
All
Take
right.
care, folks. Be
Yes.
well.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
My pleasure.
I would